What is Tata all about?
So along with that presence, there is also folklore, there is legend, there is anecdotes, there are personal connects at times, and it is not dissimilar to a human being in many ways. The construction and strengthening and upkeep or growth of a brand is every minute, every day is a moment of truth that takes it further or takes it centered or takes it in a desired direction. A company becomes unsure of its filters before it flares into consequences of distrust.
All my life, I have spent answering questions, getting involved in conversations, doing all kinds of things. But you know what? Sometimes you realize that in your journey of this answering, learning, moving, meeting people, running companies, you learn a lot from people who you work with. Yeah. This is my first attempt and my first show towards bringing that kind of knowledge that I have gained over my work life onto this platform. This is going to be a very interactive platform. There's going to be conversation, which I am really looking forward to, because the people I'm going to invite on this platform are people who have made a huge difference to my life. And when I say huge difference, they've impacted my life in some form or the other. So today, my first guest, who I've invited on this platform, and I'm honored that he's agreed to come on board, is Mr. Pradhan. I am going to introduce Mr. Pradhan to you. Mr. Satish Pradhan is possibly India's most respected and most revered HR professional. And in the course of this conversation, I'm going to peel the onion. I'm not going to spend time talking about that. Yeah. But he has made a huge impact in my life by the kind of human being he is. You meet a lot of professionals. There are human beings who impact your life in small little ways. And I have known Mr. Pradhan for a very, very long time. Yeah. And every time I talk to him, every time I ask him a question, every time I seek a answer or I seek help, he's been a huge help to me and my family too on many fronts. He's always volunteered. He's always been there. He's always responded. I find it fascinating. And I think it's a great value. Good morning, sir. Welcome to my platform. Welcome to my show on SW World.
Good morning, Tarun.
I'm so honored.
Wonderful to be on this platform you've created. And as you were speaking, the thought that struck me was Tarun doesn't realize he's creating a bigger learning opportunity for me than he is doing for himself, which has always been the case. So thank you very much for this and other opportunities we've had over the years.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure is mine. So I'm going to deep dive. Okay. Sir, my first question is an obvious question, but I'm going to ask, correct? Over the last 15, 20 years, I've worked very closely with the Tata Group, whether launching brands for Tata Tea, Chroma, all those brands, Starbucks. I mean, I'm not going to dwell time on that. You know most of it. Yeah. But my question to you is, which is what I've been asked many, many times by entrepreneurs, by people who run companies, what is Tata all about? Why is Tata's the way it is, and why it is the way it is? And I think there's no one who's answered it precisely till today.
It's something that if you come in touch with the Tata Group in any form, shape or manner, which a lot of the people in this country and even beyond now, it's a reality. Because whether it is soap or whether it has been salt or whether it has been whatever it's been in the Indian environment for many, many, many decades and in a ubiquitous kind of way. So along with that presence, there is also folklore, there is legend, there is anecdotes, there are personal connects at times. And it is not dissimilar to a human being in many ways.
True.
See, and I'll break into a bit of Hindi. Uh, जब एक घर में एक बच्चा पैदा होता है तो उसकी पैदाइश उसके मीनिंग मेकिंग और अस्तित्व का बिगिनिंग हो जाता है. उसके बाद उसकी परवरिश, उसकी देखभाल, prenatal onwards, you're absorbing ambient inputs, messaging, feelings, triggers for your serotonin and other neurochemicals which happen without even your becoming aware of them. So that, I think if you take that long view and then look at the question you asked, what is this thing called Tatas all about? It is, I don't think that it warrants or it benefits from a fixed answer. So an answer to your question is not a snapshot.
Okay.
It is what I would call a palimpsest, जो parchment के ऊपर scripture या कहानी पुराने जमाने में लिखी जाती थी और and then that was reused without completely erasing what had been written, but without letting it be the prominent script that was visible, which was what was being written at that time. So any entity like the Tatas, any brand of that kind, which is ubiquitous and growing and loved and felt about in many ways, positively and sometimes negatively, rewrites its current, where is it, in the eyes of the people who are experiencing it, on that parchment which has been written on earlier from its birth.
Beautiful.
So I don't know whether that metaphor answers the pattern of the answer you're looking for, but I'm sure it will not give you the content.
No, it is giving me a framework, which is very important. Like you rightly put.
Branding wizard, you know this better. Brands never stand still.
True.
The construction and strengthening and upkeep or growth of a brand is every minute, every day is a moment of truth that takes it further or takes it centered or takes it in a desired direction. And therefore, what we do, and therefore the answer to your question to me perhaps lies more in the fact that for the long period that I've been associated with the group, an important conversation at almost every level was to try and crack the issue of, so in this context or this decision or this judgment, what does Tata-ness mean?
Absolutely. Very well put.
And if that is alive, I think that is what Tata is all about.
I think that pins it beautifully. So to build on this, my next question is, many years back, I'm talking of 2012, 2013, I was sitting with a very senior person from a large FMCG company. And he asked me a very simple question. He says, Tarun, why do our brands suffer? Why do our brands suffer? And my response to him was, you all lack continuity because every 2 years you'll keep changing people. I think the Tatas, it's the opposite. Continuity is where I think Tata builds what it builds. Would you like to speak a little about that? Because I think it's a very important tool in either building an organization or building a brand. This whole thing
I'm going to share an opinion I have, and I think it is an opinion which benefits from the liberty of not having any official or other official ties with the institution I want to speak about, which is very important to the Tata Group. Indian Hotels under Puneet's leadership has made great strides in a direction of choice.
Yeah.
And you can see it's walking that path with confidence and with a degree of energy and even perhaps aggression for growth and for establishing that dimension that is become important to the company and to the brand. Uh, if you just go back to the palimpsest, yeah, what was written earlier was the symbolic behavior of leaders who built the brand from the stage of its ancient history having been written. The first Indian, luxury hotel, the first to have electricity, the first to have climate management systems in a certain way, etc., etc., etc. And then it was an established, was the first of many already. And then it became a bigger brand which served multiple cities in the country, multiple segments within the country, brought luxury to the people who could now afford it, but had not even been able to access it in multiple ways. And so that began to become the way in which Tajness or Tataness or the ethos or the core of the entity, what it stood for was beginning to be seen and reinforced by the symbolic behavior and actions of people who made a difference and caused a virality of that behavior.
Wow, I love that. Virality
Yeah?
of that behavior. What a contemporary term for such an important value.
Which, yeah, so it's like a anachronistic statement. We understand virality and its speed and impact and amplification in today's electronic context, but it was actually human in those days without the technology that is available today. It throws us into a set of questions which are very rich in learning. So thank you for triggering that in my mind. So now go back to that part of it. So Puneet is doing some of this in his own symbolic way. People like Anmol, people like Ranjit Philippos, people like my friend who was in London for a long time, Prabhat. All of these guys are now nodes of amplification. And they are amplifying not just the behavior which touches everyone around them, but they are now unpacking it in words and speaking to it as they do it and encourage others to do it. So that's an evolutionary form of brand, energizing or brand enactment, I would say, in a very live and vibrant way, which is really very substantive in today's world. So I think that adds another layer to the question that you asked, in terms of many aspects of it.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. So now to build on this, one of the things that is emerging in this world, in the real world, is the emergence of hungrier small town talent. Whether you look at cricket, you look at corporate world, you look at startups, you look at all around you. There are just a whole lot of youngsters who are coming from areas which you haven't even thought about. If you watch the IPL, every team has 2-3 players who come from places you haven't heard before. Yeah. So my question to you is, what is changing in this world of talent movement, which is moved from these big urban cities to these smaller, hungrier cities? And why is it happening?
So let me come at it in a slightly different way.
Sure.
You would recall in the days of radio and Amin Sahni and Binaka Geetmala and those times, Talaiya Jhumri Talaiya,
Yeah.
most of us didn't even know it existed on this planet and thought it was a fictitious claim.
Yeah.
But in every program, on every radio channel where music was played, there was a request from someone in Jhumri Talaiya in the form of, most of the time, a postcard which would be read out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? Now, just think about what you said about emerging talent and hunger and visibility, etc. Radio was the most wide, ubiquitous mode of communication in those days.
Yeah. True.
It gave one very important thing to the kind of people you're referring to today, which is access. You were invited to write a letter, a card, postcard. And if I remember right, at that time, the postcard cost was 2.5 to 5 paise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it generated so much interest in the meager and small population in the back of beyond of a place like Jhumri Talaiya to keep sending requests and having a conversation which the person managing that program would say, Tarun, आपकी चिट्ठी हमारे मेहमान तरुण बोल रहे हैं झुमरी तलैया से कि हमको ये गाना सुनाइए, तो ये हमने कई लोगों से भी सुना है और हम ये गाना आपके लिए आज 2 बार बजाएंगे.
True.
What's happening here? Now telescope that into today. Access and opportunity doors have been opened. Talent and there is a big advantage this country has. Numbers. कभी डर लगता है but फायदा भी है उसका. So in a village, if there are 5 people who are interested in cricket, and over time that becomes a larger number, and out of 5, maybe 1 was reasonably talented and not hardworking. By the time you got to 500, 20 were hardworking and talented, and maybe one of them got, access to a bigger stage. That, I think, is what is happening across, not just in cricket or in football or in sports, across all areas in which talent exists. And believe you me, talent itself is a widely defined scope of area which is growing every minute as we speak. So that's a very, very reassuring frame to say there is opportunity and access for a lot of people. But it's not, we haven't solved that problem. We've addressed some of the limits, we've mitigated some of the challenges, but it still hangs in the context of precarity. And I'm using that word as a word which is used in the language we are speaking, but in a simple way saying, being unsure of the ground you stand on. क्या? तो आप पढ़े लिखे हो, आप पढ़े लिखे नहीं हो, आप टैलेंटेड हो, किसी ने कह दिया कि भाई तरुण बहुत अच्छा क्रिकेट खेलता है, बहुत अच्छा घुड़सवार है, how long? It translates into some amount of money, into some amount of comfort, into some amount of benefits of that talent, the monetization mostly. But it's precarious because it is not assured. Change the frame. In an older time, a job, a government job, a corporate job, or a nursery job meant some degree of surety about the future. हाँ, इंक्रीमेंट कितना मिलेगा पता नहीं, लेकिन तनख्वाह तो मिलेगी. रिटायरमेंट के बाद में पेंशन तो मिलेगी. Yeah, we today we realize that none of that can be taken for granted by anybody. While many still have that, but in their own minds and in their lives, a level of precarity has entered all of those organized lives. So, what will happen to the new avenues for talent? It's no different from the labor naka in Pimpri Chinchwad, where Tarun comes with his minibus and looks at 20 Satishes over there with their carpentry ki joli and say, "Haan, tu aaja, tu aaja, tu aaja, chalo."
Very true. Is that got to do with fear?
So that precarity, it is precarious. They are unsure of the ground they stand on. तो जब वो मिट्टी ही अनरिलायबल या अनश्योर है तो भय तो होगा ही ना. गिरने का भय होगा कि नुकसान का होगा. There will be fear and anxiety of all kinds. Precarity is very strongly related to the anxiety it causes.
Oh.
If you are unsure, it doesn't make you very confident.
But I just think this little generation, the small town generation, that block they don't have. That the fear of something not happening. They just go there and perform.
I am not equipped to answer that question in a completely definitive or honest way because I don't know enough of them. I only see a glimpse and my sample may not be representative or forget statistically, even existentially, it may not be valid. But what I sense is, and that's again guesswork, so I'm not so pushy about it or prescriptive based on that. My sense is that when you come out of a context to another, there is an experience of being liberated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of having escaped. Yeah. And also it is, sort of impelled, it gains energy from a sense of I have nothing to lose, so I will only gain.
Yeah. I think that's a huge insight.
But when you are in the labor naka bheed, तब तो भय होता है ना कि भाई नहीं मिलेगा तो क्या करूंगा, आज खाना क्या खाऊंगा,
आज क्या करूंगा, आज क्या करूंगा.
उम्मीद पे दुनिया कायम है लेकिन डर भी तो लगता है.
Absolutely.
So I think we've got, and I'll give you a concrete example now. When, forget COVID, you and I have talked about COVID and those times when, people just did good things and great things for people around. They didn't know the migrants, the people who had need for food, etc. We did that. Just now in the oil crisis, when the gas cylinder challenges come up, I didn't know that there were people living in the surrounding area of my neighborhood in basti accommodation in some very modest living arrangements. And many of them had tried very hard, but they were mostly migrant labor. Tried very hard and got, by some means or the other, a gas cylinder and a gas chula. And that made life much more affordable for them because they could buy the ingredients and cook themselves. The kind of food they wanted, the cost cutting that they could do, and affordable for all the 5 people who lived in that place and shared the cost and the burden of cooking for each other. Now, the minute this became difficult to do, alternatives also were not available. Easily available wood and chulas on which they could cook with wood fire were not possible in an urban setting like this. Neither the availability of wood nor the ability to cook with that. Electrical cooking devices were available. but not available at the affordable prices and not of the kind that they wanted to cook with. So electrical options were out. Kerosene, same problem. None of that is available. So how do they cook? And I discovered this when I saw a few of them walking with their bags out of the basti, and I was going past it. Just stopped and asked, क्या हो रहा है? कि नहीं सर, वो खाना नहीं बना पा रहे हैं, तो सोचा गांव चले जाएंगे और जब ये ठीक हो जाएगा तब वापस आ जाएंगे. कोविड के टाइम भी तो गए थे, अभी तो ट्रेन वेन सब चल रहा है.
Wow.
Now, why am I telling you this story when you're asking me about the most promising and inspiring backdrop of access for small town and village people to demonstrate talent and win the world based on that talent? It's not a denial of what you're saying. I'm saying those bright lights are there and they are worthy of applauding and respecting and encouraging. But there are some shadows which those bright lights also cast, which we need to be mindful of.
We should be aware of that. So to put this in context now, I'm going to go back to the question I wanted to ask you. With this whole moving parts and this whole change that we are seeing so quickly and so fast, how do HR people manage? How should HR people manage this? Because I think most of them are frozen. They're still caught in a different world.
See, I think HR people have struggled with existential crisis for quite some time now.
I'm not saying that.
Meaning of life kya hai, kya karna hai. And each one has had to find their own path within that for themselves, their careers, their companies, etc. So I'm not going to be too kind or too harsh, but I'll just try to be too realistic. The world is changed.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. Sadly, in many areas, and since we are talking about HR, I guess in HR we need to be honest and say little has changed.
Sorry?
Little has changed in how we think about it, how we do our jobs, and how we try and address this rapidly changing, swirling turbulence that has now overtaken itself. I mean, you go back 10 years, just 10 years. Anything which we developed as an approach, a model, a perspective, a competency framework, compensation model, tools for analyzing competitiveness, skill testing, etc. Anything out of that, the likelihood that it is still relevant and powerful, forget powerful, relevant, is pretty, hypothetically at least, looking like a very low number in single digits.
Yeah.
So the question that you're asking is, kya kar rahe hain? I think they're just trying to cope with what they have. Most of our HR people are struggling with the tools that they have, with the approaches that they have, and what has worked in the past. And it's not that they're insensitive to what we just talked about. They're not a bunch of dumb guys. It is just that boiling the ocean is an impossible task for the people trapped in the corridors and the cages of corporate roles.
Sir, in the last 6 months, I know 2 large corporations. I won't get into names. They have bought 2 extremely good startups in the e-commerce space. Both those 2 startups are struggling with these people. Now, put them in 2 silos. At one end, you had a youngster who set it up, who did extremely well. At the other end, you had this corporate who bought them. These corporates are unable to figure out how to run it. What will you tell these people? What is the formula to sort this out?
I think we need to avoid romanticizing the startup or demonizing the corporate, because demons भी कई तरह के होते हैं और कद्दू भी कई तरह के होते हैं. So let's get a little real. The things that work in a startup and are valuable
Yeah, that's the
need
answer.
to,
Yeah,
be, need to be thought through. कि बॉस ये अपने 17 माले के ग्लास टावर कॉर्पोरेट ऑफिस में कैसे करेंगे हम लोग, इस
absolutely.
विचार को कैसे पैदा करेंगे,
Absolutely.
and how do we bring those parts of our glass and chrome corporate office into that dhaba from where these guys run their shop?
Absolutely. That's the answer I'm looking for.
So the questions we ask have to change. The work we pursue has to change.
Absolutely.
And sadly, in a set organization like you described, a corporate successful organization which can afford to buy two such startups,
Yeah.
has not got there with failure or with fractures or with faults only. Their a narrative of themselves. You asked about the Tatas in the first question.
Yeah.
तो एक अपनी कहानी बताते हैं ना हम लोग अपने आप को,
Yeah.
कि हम भले लोग हैं, हम अच्छा करते हैं, हम पैसे बनाते हैं, हम तरुण को रोज सुबह चाय पिलाते हैं, अच्छी चाय पिलाते हैं. वो that's a story we tell ourselves. So when you are telling yourself this story as a corporate today, what is the story you want to create now, which is different from that story?
Absolutely, sir.
We give people permanent jobs. Yeah, you're actually, throwing that into the wind. We give people fair wages. Really? We give people exciting work. All of the people? Really? So what is the story that is now becoming very tattered and fragmented at the edges and doesn't carry the weight that it had when you started speaking that language? And why? So how will we do this differently? And for that, if you don't have the courage to say, listen, this Tarun Chauhan set of competencies that we built in 1932 has got to go.
You answered it so beautifully. That's the answer I was looking for. Tarun Chauhan is the wrong name there, but it's okay.
You have to reinvent. You have to reinvent, and you have to have the courage to reinvent. But equally, you have to also have the wisdom to know what you're going to reinvent. So replacing one competency framework with another competency framework is not the answer. What is it that you're looking for? And you ask me, what we are struggling with is capabilities. उसमें औकात आती है, हैसियत आती है, काबिलियत आती है, इच्छा आती है, प्रवृत्ति आती है, जज्बा आता है. उस बॉल ऑफ नूडल्स को कैसे आप खाओगे, पहले तो अनटैंगल कैसे करोगे, उसको समझोगे कैसे, उसको पहचानोगे कैसे, और फिर खाओगे कैसे,
किससे खाओगे? So now to build on this, I'm going to keep building on what you're saying because I think it's leading to a fantastic space. This whole conflict between monolithic large organizations and these extremely sexy startups, correct? And these guys are on fire, these startups, most of them, yeah. The question now is our ecosystem, that is our funnel to provide talent to this kind of corporate world, which is a combination of startup and monolithic companies, do we have the academic structure for that?
No, you're bang on, and I think that's an excellent thread to pick up because we have been struggling with reforms in education. And let's be fair, the NEP was an attempt to address some of those challenges. Again, it's not easy to do, and I'm not making excuses for the policymakers or for the administrators of higher education or lower education or class, primary education systems. But I think we need an intellectual boldness and a scientific depth to conceive the new frameworks that will deliver the answer to your question in a reasonable time, on a reasonable scale, given that both our country has a time bomb in terms of our demographic dividend, and it has a time bomb in terms of the scale that we have to address. So there's time and there is scale, which both need to be accelerated, and depth and wisdom to land a framework of a solution which has to happen within these constraints. So let's take that further. Education, particularly let's address higher education. By higher education, I'm talking about graduate, postgraduate, diploma, degree, etc., that stuff. Largely the universe covered by AICTE and UGC. And then let's look at the labor market of educated people.
Fabulous.
Yeah. What is it that this universe is asking for? They're not asking for degrees. The startup high energy system is not saying show me your degree and I'll employ you. What they're saying is tu kar kya sakta hai?
What are you? Absolutely correct. Absolutely.
Can you write efficient code in Python for me in 12 hours which will deliver XYZ? Yeah. Can you design as a system architect the upstream, downstream linkages of a sensor which goes into embedded software of a IoT machine, and it goes into human interface of the CNC elements that are legacy residues from past electronics? I don't care whether you have a hardware degree, a software degree, or literature degree. Now, if you're recalibrating to that, then you need something different. You need a kind of approach which captures, measures, encourages, develops, values some form or shape of what I call capability. If you cannot, what is the unit of measurement that you're looking at for this world? वो अगर आप तय नहीं कर सकते हो,
तो that is where the problem is.
पढ़ाओगे क्या, सिखाओगे क्या, प्रिस्क्राइब क्या करोगे, करिकुलम क्या बनाओगे, अध्यापक क्या पढ़ाएंगे, सर्टिफाई क्या करोगे, और मिलेगा क्या इंडस्ट्री को? आज भाषा अगर आप किसी भी पढ़े लिखे आदमी को पूछो कि तरुण ये मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरिटी के बारे में आपका क्या विचार है, तो यू डोंट इवन हैव टू स्विच ऑन योर ब्रेन, you just have to play the play button. Of course it is important. We must be able to create polymaths, and we have to have people who are multidisciplinary. We must build education for that. ये वो फलाना सब बोलेंगे. लेकिन in real terms, do we recognize the cellular jails of academic disciplines and the taxonomy of knowledge? आप colonization of the mind में political aspects के ऊपर और other aspects पे बहुत जल्दी कूद जाते हो. Colonization of the mind in the taxonomy of knowledge clusters is far deeper and more dangerous and more harmful.
Absolutely.
उसको आपने दिया नजर. See, and I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying that, we need to look at this. If Ayurveda is something which is valuable, and I don't doubt that, if Unani medicine is also valuable, if Gharelu Nuskas, which when Tarun was a little brat and falling all over the uh, kheti badi everywhere, he had to be suitably
Restored.
taken off with grandparental wisdom of क्या खिलाना है, क्या पिलाना है, क्या लेप लगाना है, क्या चोट लगी तो क्या करना है, all that. If all of that constitutes care and health care, as we are trying to define it in a multidisciplinary way, then do you need to actually be over obsessed with the taxonomy of medical knowledge as it currently sits? Do we have the courage to bring in wires which will connect? Like, for example, one of the things that we did benefit from, and we have instances in India of that, mechanical engineering and orthopedics. There is a whole field of biomechanical engineering which is awaiting quick and powerful solutions. But वो जब आपका engineering college और medical college minimum distance is 2 cities, then where will you find that kind of reframing? And how will you answer the question that you said, which to my mind is a subset of this? I mean, you look at business schools. Everybody and their grandmother is talking about industry academia partnership, and how many of them have actually got industry sitting in a corporate or in a startup and trying to figure out with them the curriculum that they should be teaching in their MBA. Simple.
I'm yet to find one.
They're not even going to the campus and trying to get them to teach. See, there is a certain dominance that the corporate world has, startup or otherwise. Standing strong or looking bright, whatever it is. And that is, if you need something, you go and get it. You go and make it. You go and get someone to make it. Yeah?
Yeah.
अब घुड़सवार को अगर सैडल चाहिए से बनवा लेता है. If the need of industry is so sharp and so incisively clear to them, why have they not captured institutions of management and said, boss, you guys just sit down quietly. We will bloody well create what we want and what we need. And we have the capacity and the resources to do it.
Wow. Absolutely. I mean, it's so sharp.
So those are the questions.
Yeah. Now to build on this, I'm not going to take much of your time anymore. Another two more questions before we get down to my favorite subject, which I will come to. In this new world, sir, I think the coding of crisis management has changed. I don't think so. A lot of HR or corporate people are able to understand the new age crisis. They are used to old age crisis. Things happen today, they move very fast, media catches up, social media catches up. I don't think so they're wired to deal with it. What's the one line advice you would like to give them?
The whole issue of a crisis in the past fell into a pattern which one change fundamental to all that is technology, right? So technology changes, a lot of the stuff around it changes, and crises have been saddled with technology as one of the ingredients which has changed the entire world that they live in.
Yeah.
That the actors live in. But that apart, I think let me walk you through an example which will bring alive what has changed and what needs to be addressed differently. So suddenly today on the table in front of you, a message lands which says TCS Nashik scandal leads to 5 arrests.
Yeah. That's all over.
Now what has happened in this? What has landed is a pre-packaged label. It is not landed as a fact. Right?
Yeah, superb. Well done. Well said, sir.
So when I use the word scandal, when I use the word TCS and I use the word Nashik, the message is TCS is the frame, corporate frame in which this is. Nashik is the location. Scandal is the kind of thing that has happened. End of story. So now immediately what happens when this message lands? The virality we talked about, the amplification we talked about, is at the speed of, light years.
Absolutely.
It's not kilometers per hour. It is by the time you have sent it forward to me, it has already gone to 1 billion people from that one zero patient originator. We talk about how in COVID we learned this phrase because zero patient kya hota hai, from where the whole pandemic or whatever epidemic starts. So the guy who coined that phrase first, the amplification and virality and speed is unbelievable. So that is one thing which has changed, which you rightly pointed out.
Yeah.
The first part is what I said, which is what it was itself has changed.
Yeah.
From a crisis being driven by. So, for example, you say, what happened when we had the Chernobyl disaster, or let's take our own Union Carbide.
Bhopal.
What happened when the gas leak took? Bhopal gas leak. Yeah. That was the story.
It ended there.
And it broke in the newsprint. It broke on the TV channels. And it was mostly covering 49 people were affected in this way, 52 people were affected in this way. This is the equipment that blew up at 4 o'clock in the evening. This is the number of fire brigade people who went there. All that was the bulk of the first piece of coverage. So the facts arrived. There was breathing space between facts, some thinking, and some judgment of the event. Yeah. Today, in nothing, the biggest reason why you have a crisis. तो ये मल्टीप्लायर कहाँ से आता है?
इसको हैंडल कैसे करें सर?
हाँ, तो उसमें आपको 2 चीजें. एक तो you have to do all the good things that people advise by way of technology, by way of fast forwards को prevent करना, fact checking करना, ये करना, वो करना, misinformation, arrest, those kinds of technology filters, etc. More important, and this is where I think I see a great opportunity in your question. You need to build cognitive resilience. I was trying to put my thoughts on this aside, so you may want to be a bit cautious in your editing of this piece. A nation becomes fragile before it becomes angry.
Superbly put.
Yeah. A company becomes unsure of its filters before it flares into consequences of distrust.
Wow.
Yeah. तो ये माहौल को बनाना और लोगों, योर फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस इज योर पीपल. लोगों को आप जब तक ये पढ़ाते नहीं रखते, व्हाई डज दिस गो बैक टू योर एजुकेशन क्वेश्चन? यू आर नॉट टीचिंग पीपल टू बी रिफ्लेक्टिव. to check facts, to not jump to conclusions. We say we want critical thinking. अरे ना तो थिंकिंग ना तो क्रिटिकल, आप दोनों को डिफाइन नहीं करते हो तो आप करोगे क्या फिर, कैसे आएगा वो, यू नो?
Superbly put, sir.
So unless you tie these threads together and build a citizen level first line of defense, which will come only
Superbly
from
put.
it. And the second is, then if you do not have guardrails which say, listen, there are certain disciplines that all different spaces have to occupy. For example, media. If media is going to try and spark emotional vulnerability with chingaris which can be emotionally, I mean, then you're committing a crime in many ways.
Yeah.
So now that difference between censorship and curbing the democratic rights, and because when you, in the name of preventing, your democracy to be weakened, if you start killing democracy itself, तो क्या होगा?
Yeah, that's another problem.
So then you have to keep that also alive, and you have to keep this also alive.
Oh, wow. This is rich.
So
And I hope this is very rich.
This warrants a separate.
Before we wind up, I've taken a lot of your time. Before we wind up, I'm going to ask you my favorite question, which we both. Why is India heating up so much? What is your take on that?
See, India is a part of the world, and the world is heating up. India is heating up as well. But India is heating up much more than other parts of the world for two. One is कि भाई, you're located in a certain part of the planet, which is more vulnerable than, I mean, the Arctic is also heating up, the Antarctica is also heating up, but they have a lot of ice which can melt and it'll get hotter, but it'll take a little longer, right? The oceans are also getting hot, but they have cold water currents and it takes them time. We are also getting hot, and there are three things happening here. One, we are joyfully and gleefully destroying our country's green cover. We are making a monkey. We are making a monkey of ourselves. If I keep telling you that, listen, I've got this 5 acres in Karjat, and it was barren, absolutely barren. क्या खेती हो रही थी भाई वहाँ पे? तो पेड़ थोड़, there won't be trees, there'll be खेती. And I planted, in the first year itself, I planted 1,000 trees. Very good. Then after that, I've been every year planting 1,000 trees. और अब 10 साल हो गए हैं. So I've been greening that place. And what actually may be happening is that you buy saplings, you plant them, you live in London, and nobody cares for those saplings. 5% of them survive. And then again, next year 5% maybe, but the first year 2 only survive. And by the end of the next period that you're looking at, you're left with only 5 trees in that full plot. But statistically, you have a spreadsheet and a dashboard which shows how much you've greened it more than it was. So that's one kind of, lies we tell ourselves. The second thing that we are doing is we're feeling very joyful about the fact that 70% of India will be living in cities by Viksit Bharat 2047. Is that a good thing, or is that not such a good thing? Because what are cities today? Cities are concrete high-rise towers, glass-coated steel structures with huge heat island effect, with huge heat canyon effect. Today, the ground temperature on the pavement of a BKC kind of place or a Gurgaon kind of place is at least 5 degrees warmer than it is on the rooftop of that building.
Yeah, very true.
And we know all this. It's not that we are dumb, that we don't know. We know heat island effect, we know heat canyon effect. But somewhere we just slip that into the cracks between our frontal cortex and our amygdala, and straight down into the lower gut, and keep talking about how global capability centers and high-rise towers and urban living will solve the problem for everybody, because then we can provide in areas of concentrated population medical care, metro trains, and give higher FSI, schools, and सब इकट्ठा एक वर्टिकलाइज्ड. अरे तुम्हारे जमीन के ऊपर कैपेसिटी है क्या कि 1 फुट जमीन के ऊपर 70 लोग खड़े होके उसके ऊपर वजन डालेंगे? Do you have the carrying capacity of your planet and your country and your cities? Does it have the load-bearing facility for water, sewage, temperature, air? Transport. Do we have this? We don't.
Zero.
So now to answer your question after this long tirade, yes, we know why it is heating up and we want it to heat up. Simple answer, because who cares what happens after my useful life? I will leave behind this planet like a used coffee cup, which I didn't even have the energy to insult by crushing it and throwing it.
I'm sorry, but I wanted this answer, which is why I instigated that question, and I got the answer what I was looking for. Now, to wrap up this conversation, I know you are very involved with a lot of other things, but I'm going to wrap it up with one important question that we both share. What's the one thing you've learned from the tiger? I know you love tigers. I know you spend half your life in tiger reserves. We share that common interest. But I want to hear from you one thing that you learned from that animal. Because that's it's a leadership lesson.
Yeah, it's an unfair question because there are many things and many things that I've observed over a very long period of time. But if you were to narrow it down to one thing, I think patience and timing, which are very uncharacteristic of a charismatic predator, are the things that I think stand out in what I've learned from the tiger as a species.
Wow. And that's how it survives.
और तो बाकी सब कुछ कर लेते हैं. Patience or timing ही तो is what creates.
That is all leadership, no sir. Any crisis, anything in life, that's the core value of leadership.
And legacy.
And legacy.
All you and I have been exchanging notes about tigers like Machli and Maya and others. Legacy कैसे बनती है? They suffer much more harsh challenges than we do in corporate world or leadership world or anywhere. But patience and timing.
So to wrap up this conversation, I know it's your pet subject. What's the one thing you want to tell youngsters as someone who's seen life from all sides?
See, I don't want to go into the area of advice giving for what to do or what not to do. I think that's inappropriate. But yes, how they can figure out what is the best thing for them to choose at different points of time is a life journey preparation, which I think is an important thing to do. कि आप तैयारी करो, आप टूल्स बनाओ अपनी जिंदगी के, कंपास तैयार करो. अगर आप स्पेस में जाना चाहते हो तो गेट योर telescopes and azimuths and all your or navigational equipment mentally and emotionally sorted out, and keep sharpening that, because it once acquired, it is not enough. So if you acquire patience, if you acquire a judgment about timeliness, keep sharpening it. But decide what timeliness and patience is for you. What are those east, west, north, south on your compass? और कुछ नहीं तो डॉक्टर सुएज जैसी बचपन की किताबें पढ़ के कुछ थोड़ा रिविजिट करो अपने कंपसेस को.
Okay.
You remember that famous book that he wrote for children? It's called "Oh, the Places You Will Go."
Yeah.
It's worth a revisit. Anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
but thank you very much. I think it's been exciting and, as usual, very, very stimulating talking to you. Good luck with
And
this
it's my
platform.
pleasure. It's my pleasure that you've given me the honor, the opportunity to talk to you. And I hope this travels. A lot of people see it. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.